Well, good afternoon again, WW2 TV people. I'm Paul Woodadge. I'm usually Paul Woodadge. I'm still Paul Woodadge. We're beaming in from a slightly blustery Netherlands today for what will be a very exciting show, I hope. Well, it will be about Hell's Highway, and I have the Dutch Dream team because the French Dream team are off now because it's September. So the Dutch Dream team, being the main historian presenter today, is Joris. So good afternoon, Joris. Are you ready for this?
Yes, hello. I'm all ready, all set, standing on Hell's Highway.
Brilliant.
So yeah, we're good to go.
And Joris is roped in his better half, Doreen, to be on camera number one. And we have Edwin, who did the last show about the previous show about Hell's Highway, who's now demoted to camera 2 today. So we have he did very well, but he's demoted. So that's the format. We'll show some images and things. And I'm going to hand over. I'll put the screen on Joris for a second just to do an introduction, then he'll flip it around so we can show it. Yes. So what are we going to talk about today then, Joris?
Well, let me flip the camera. We're going to talk about this stretch of road in front of me and behind me. So looking this way, looking south, we're looking now towards north, looking towards the village of Veghel. This is the actual road that was used in 44. Of course, the road service has changed slightly, but it's the exact same location. And looking towards the other side of the new motorway is Sint-Oede Road. Looking south, eventually you reach the village of Zoom, where we did the live stream a couple of days ago, and then Eindhoven, and beyond that you will eventually get to the Belgian border where Market Garden started. Today, as you know, the 24th of September, Market Garden is basically in its death throes. There are still some people who believe success can be gained, but it's going to be very tough to make the situation work. The road was blocked on the 20th at Zoom. We discussed that on Saturday.
We did.
But on Friday the 22nd, a day which became known as Black Friday, the Germans blocked the road for the first time, mostly to the north of Veghel, between the village of Ude and Veghel itself. And for more than a full day, there was no traffic going from the north to the south. And Guards Brigade had to come back from Nijmegen to reopen the road. And on the map you can see now on the right hand side, Nijmegen, that's the area where the road was cut. The Allies managed to reopen the road on the 23rd, so yesterday basically. And then things look peachy. I mean, in Nijmegen, the bridge had been captured. They made contact with the Polish paratroopers in Driel, and now plans were made to throw a couple of battalions across the Rhine, build a bridge, and salvage some success out of the operation. Well, the Germans unfortunately had other plans, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So if you can bring the map back again, please.
Yep.
So we are going to talk about the area around where it says Koevering. Eerde is looking west. Difficult to see now with the motorway and the brush. But it is the woods around Koevering that we are going to focus on during this session. And the area has changed dramatically since 1944. Of course, you can already see and maybe hear even the motorway, but more changes has been made. And there's another Google Earth image coming up now.
Yep.
And again, you can see in the red circles the objectives of the Germans. Those were the bridges across the Zuid-Willemsvaart Canal. And the yellow part is basically the original lay of the corridor, but in 44, of course, that was completely empty, just farms. And that is following this road, and then you'll come in that yellow section of the corridor. The red section of the corridor is now completely gone. Motorway has been built on top of it. and very few traces remain of the road. On Black Friday, the 22nd of September, the Germans attacked Veghel from two sides, both from the west, where I'm looking at now, and from the east. But luckily for the Allies, they had now removed the threat coming from the east, and then now they only had to contend with troops coming from the west, from the Eerde direction. And it was in the morning of the 24th that the Germans launched a massive attack on Eerde, trying to retake the village and break through to the bridges at Veghel. Luckily, they were not able to succeed. The 501st put up a very stubborn fight in the sand dunes, which is well, basically a story by itself.
Of course. And
because the Germans were unable to break through Eerde, there was a small group under the command of Major Nieuwint, and he had about 40 guys with him, and two Jagdpanthers. Those are pretty impressive tank destroyers, I should say, self-propelled guns. And they took a roundabout route around Eerde, and they arrived at the area where Doreen is.
Is this map one, Joris? Do I show map one now?
Yeah, map one, yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, there's Nieuwint's Jagdpanthers there coming in, folks. And there's Eerde that Joris spoke about, and the 501st and the 502nd. So these maps provided by Joris, amazing stuff, really good quality. Battlefield Explorer. Check him out online for his tours and his information and his own YouTube channel. I'll shut up now and let you talk.
Yeah, if you can switch your camera to Doreen, because she is now on that red line, the red arrow you just saw, and it is from the direction that she's now looking at that the Germans came from.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the.
She's right here. Okay, good, super.
Yep. And it was about 5:30 in the afternoon. No surprises there, because just as it is at this time, and they reached the center line of 30 Corps. This was the main supply route, and for them this was the easy part of the operation, because at that time there were only lorries along the route. Only lorries of 30 Corps, 64 Medium Regiment, and some supply troops, RASC. And especially the Jagdpanthers, they had a field day. All they had to do was just shoot at anything that moved. And they very quickly had destroyed over 50 trucks. And they took a number of officers, I think 5 to 8 officers, 32 non-coms, and a bunch of soldiers prisoner. And it was really a rampage. You can see that on this picture indeed. This is what the corridor looked like after it was reopened and the wrecks were all shoved aside to make room on the road. But these trucks, yeah, as it was for trucks, it was a sort of kind of massacre. Trucks were exploding everywhere. Munition went off. Fuel bowsers exploded. It was really a catastrophe. And a lot of stories go around that over 300 300 British soldiers were killed in this attack. Well, we've looked into that, especially with the Commonwealth War Graves figures, and it was in the dozens, but certainly not 300 men that were killed. That's one of those myths about Operation Market Garden.
But it does explain, sorry to interrupt, it does explain that vulnerability of that long tail of the 30 Corps advance. You know, they've got all the fighting element is further ahead now. And this tail of trucks and transport and fuel is, as you've just proven there, is incredibly vulnerable to a swift, efficient counterattack. And that's this is information I'm hoping our audience are going to appreciate. And as Joris said there, these events were happening 76 years ago, pretty much to the minute. That's why we chose this time for the show, is that was happening right now. Of course, we'll carry on a bit over the next day, but that's why we chose this time. So yeah, the vulnerability of that tail is absolutely clear.
Doreen, you can move to the second spot now. And So why were the Germans able to reach the road that easily? Well, the 101st Airborne were rather busy at this time. The 502nd was defending Sint-Oederode. The 501st was defending Eerde, was having its hands more than full defending it against the German attacks that went on all through the 24th. The 327 Glider Infantry were fully on site, but they had to defend Veghel. And the 506th, they were in the village of Uden, which is about another 5 to 10 kilometers north of Veghel. So this was a weak spot, and they scouted it out on the 23rd, and they found out that there were very few Americans here. And they were able to slip through between the 501st and the 502nd. The 502nd did try and send in troops. C Charlie Company and H Company, Hotel Company, were sent to try and catch the Germans in the act, but the Germans were too quick and they failed to do that. But it's also an interesting fact that it was C and H Company, which are for two different battalions. Which means the 502nd also was very busy and did not have a normal, the troops in the normal order ready to go out. So they were scraping by as well. So Doreen is now riding her bike on virtually the old corridor, which was more to the left of her in the woods.
Right.
And so behind these trees is where the corridor was. And this would be now be completely littered with exploding vehicles and British servicemen fleeing or being taken prisoner.
And you can tell you're Dutch because Doreen is doing his expert filming whilst riding a bike. I mean, it's like you're Dutch. You come out of the womb on bicycles, so you're completely just as comfortable on bicycles as you are walking. My compliments to you. Fantastic.
So now the road was cut, and no traffic could move south or north anymore. And just up the road, on the earlier map, you could see that the glider field artillery was located around the bridge. There's now a McDonald's there and completely built up, and they were basically astride the road, firing in support of the 501st, who were in Eerde. And it is there that they noticed something weird, which is no traffic going north anymore, and traffic was back to back all day long. And now suddenly it stopped. And of course they were busy; they were firing in support, so they had their hands full. And then they looked up, thinking that's weird, and they saw that the trucks had stopped. And in the distance, they could hear firing, and they could see big columns of smoke going up in the air. And they realized that something was very, very wrong. So they called in to their regimental commander, the commander of the glider field artillery, but he was off in Eerde. And so he was basically cut off at that point from his troops. So they reached out to the division headquarters, which was in the Veghel at that time, and immediately 3 tanks were sent. And they were sent down the road I'm on now, so you can switch to my camera, Paul. So they came down this road, and just in the distance is where the glider field artillery was. And they sent 3 tanks to investigate. And while that was being taken care of, here on this road, a column of trucks, British trucks, with American glider pilots, was driving here, and they were driving towards Brussels to fly back to the UK. And one of the guys in that column was Elgin Andros. He was a glider pilot, as I said. He landed in near Nijmegen, and he had been very busy during Market Garden because he volunteered to help the 82nd in the battles that they fought around Nijmegen. And when they drove away in Nijmegen, he said to the men, he said, "Don't lose your weapons. Make sure you hang on to what you have, and only when we get to Brussels, ditch it. I have a bad feeling about this." And they drove down this road when suddenly the first vehicles were hit by German shells. And Andros didn't hesitate a moment. He told all the glider pilots to disembark. Well, I don't think that was a big ask. I think most of the guys were already in the ditches by that time.
Yeah.
But he went on to organize the trucks to be saved. So he told his men to form a battle group, fire at the Germans, provide cover so others could drive the trucks back towards Veghel. And out of the 17 trucks that were driving towards Brussels, 13 were safe. So
wow.
He did an amazing job, and he was awarded the Silver Star for that. But this was such a jumbled moment in the Allied lines of communication that he wasn't here alone. The deputy medical director of 8 Corps, Llewellyn Hughes, was also here, and he received a military cross, I think, for helping out at the same location as well. So Eglin Andros and Hugh Hughes were here setting up the first line of defense against the Germans. Behind them, so I'll switch to the other side again, the 907 glider field artillery, they received orders to keep firing with 2 guns in support of the Americans of the 501st, and then the others to move them on the road to direct fire, that if the Germans were to break through, that they would be the last line of defense. Well, when all that had taken place, and if you can show the picture you showed us earlier, Paul, with the trucks on the road and the destroyed trucks in the ditch. And that's the area where I am now. So the truck you see with the window destroyed, that's basically in the ditch where I am looking at now.
Brilliant
so
stuff.
You can see, so that these trucks were in fact going south back towards Brussels and not north. So that's this area here.
Wow. And just, with trucks going north and trucks going south and units to the north and Allied units to the south, I mean, the issue of friendly fire and confusion is such, when something like this happens suddenly that you're not expecting, it's really difficult to even direct your fire back because, your own people are both ways up the road.
Yep.
Difficult situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, very much confusing. And of course, the main road is also the area where you lay your communication cables.
Of course, yeah.
So this would be the main branch of communication cables going towards St. Oederode, connecting the 502nd to the rest of the division. So they were basically cut off. The 501st in the area of Eerde, which is behind where I'm looking at now, they were cut off virtually. So it was a very hectic situation. But 3 tanks of the Royal Tank Regiment C Squadron were sent out to investigate and reopen the road. And when they came about where we are now, all 3 of them were destroyed in very quick succession. And if you switch to Doreen's camera now, she is at the other side of the motorway, looking back to where I am. I'm now where the trees are and the house, that's where I am.
Right.
And behind her, there is a farm, which is not very well visible from that spot. But roughly in that area, we think that one of the Jagd Panthers were. And it was firing down the immense open space that this area was in 44. And in quick succession, 3 of the Sherman tanks were destroyed. And they were reported in the war diary as being brewed up. But later the Germans were able to retrieve 2 of those Shermans and use them themselves. So in all the confusion of Germans on the center line, there were now 2 Sherman tanks with swastikas on them driving around. And you can imagine the amount of confusion that brought into the battle as well. So Doreen is now looking slightly left, so she's looking in the direction of Eerde, if she keeps on turning, which is where the 501st was. And you can see the motorway is now completely obliterated any traces of.
Yeah.
So
I
now
guess
the Allies.
it's rush hour time now, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's still in the COVID situation. It's not as busy as it was before, but it's a lot of traffic down this road. So the Allies now had a massive task ahead of them to reopen the road, and they needed to do it quickly. So these 3 Sherman tanks went in from the village of Vechel. They were destroyed, and then they decided, well, it's getting dark now, so we better wait until the next day before we can do something. And we need to move troops forward. We don't have anybody except the 506th, and they are in Uden, and they'd only been there for the better part of a day. So they were called forward now, and they were told to march all through the night to arrive in the area behind me. Sorry. And form up for what was supposed to be the main attack to reopen the road. So they would have been a couple of hundred meters back from where we are now. Meanwhile, the Germans had been not just digging in around the road, but they had also received reinforcements. A new commander had arrived. And Major Jungwirth was replaced by Major Huber, and he now took over the task force. Another Jagdpanther arrived during the night, and at least 2 88mm guns, and that is in numbers around 200 men, not very strong, but with the area open as it is, as you can see from this side. I mean, you've seen Doreen's video from the other side of the motorway. It was a mammoth task to reopen the road. The terrain was all
Are we at map
favor.
2 yet, Joris?
No, almost.
Almost.
So this is what they were facing. And they came up with an idea. The 2nd Battalion was supposed to stay in reserve and remain in the area of the bridge. And the 1st and 3rd Battalion, 1 and 3 battalions, were now being made ready for the attack. And the idea was that the 1st Battalion would move down this road, where I am now, and eventually link up with Eerde, which is in that direction with the 501st, and cut off the Germans from the northwestern side. And the 3rd Battalion was moving. There's a tree line over there.
Yep.
And they were supported by tanks from the Royal Tank Regiment, B Squadron, the same tanks that at least Easy Company worked with in Nieuwint. So
Yep.
by now they'd been together for a couple of days. When the 2nd Battalion went to Uden, B Squadron followed them, and now again they were out here together. So by this time there must have been some sort of a working arrangement and knowing what each was able to do.
Yeah.
Edwin is now in the woods where I'm pointing at now, and he is in the area from which 3rd Battalion was supposed to come and clear the woods. And he's now looking towards Vechel. This is one of those bits of the battlefield that have not changed at all since 1944. Maybe the trees have been renewed, but the lay of the land is exactly the same, which is saying a lot, because they are in the process of turning this whole area into a massive food park with lots of big, ugly buildings. So we're lucky to have some stuff still left. At 9 in the morning, after marching all night through from Uden to Vechel, the 1st and 3rd Battalions were on the attack. And they were pretty far away from each other, so it was difficult to stay on line to form a sort of kind of a solid front. And when you attack with 2 battalions down 2 roads, the frontage isn't very wide.
No.
So when they got to a crossroads, the 3rd Battalion split up, and the tanks split up as well to 3 sections. So 1 squadron of 4 tanks went with 1 part of 3rd Battalion. And they made very good progress because there were no Germans where they were at that time. Until they reached an area, and I'm walking there now. And it is there that all of a sudden the lead Sherman was hit by another of the tanks, probably firing from the area behind where Doreen is, all open, no cover. And it was roughly in this area, yeah, behind there, yeah. So it's roughly here that the lead Sherman was hit, blocking the path, and also 3 British servicemen died in the explosion. It was Land Sergeant Walter Worley, Frank Harmon, and Walter Robinson, and they were killed instantly when their Sherman blew up.
Is that the one we have a photo of, Joris?
Yes, that's the one we have a photo of, and that's the one where there is a rifle stuck in the ground. Yeah,
just brought it up now. Amazing photo.
Yep. Yeah, so this is Worley's tank. The rifle and especially the grave, the grave mark you see isn't of the crew.
Right.
So that's another soldier that also died, and they buried him next to the tank for easy retrieval, basically. So that's where I am now. So 1st Battalion would be going down the road, the tree line, and the rest of 3rd Battalion, there were paths here in 44 that have now vanished, and the rest of 3rd Battalion was basically stuck there in the tree line. And from this moment on, this is as far as the Germans allowed them to come. And from here, it's all open ground to get to where the Germans were, which is in the tree line in the distance. And they were raked by machine gun fire, by mortars, by 88s, and by the roaming Jagdpanthers. Some accounts say they were dug in, other accounts say that they were roaming around, driving from point to point. The last seems more likely to me, because they are mobile, so use their mobile.
Are we time for a map yet? Just to is it map 2
yes,
yet?
You can show map 2. Yes.
I'm just excited. You see, this is so good. I want to just I'm ready. I'm all. So where are you on that map? Let's remind us where Doreen is and where you are. So you are.
So Doreen is where the red dotted line intersects with the orange line, roughly.
Right. Yeah.
I am now in the middle of the 3 prongs.
Right.
And Edwin is in the woods now, probably inside German territory, just where your mouse is now. Yes.
Okay.
In
Super.
That section. Yep. And, so this is the attack by 1st and 3rd Battalions with B Squadron 44 Royal Tank Regiment trying to break through to reopen the road. And I have to say, of course, we're only focusing now on the area of the 506th, because from the south, from the area of Sint-Oederode, there was also a massive push trying to break through towards the north. So from 2 sides, the attack was on trying to break through, but for simplicity, we're just focusing now on the 506th.
Yeah, and the bit to the south is less authentic, isn't it, as well?
Yeah,
today?
it's different than where we are now. Totally. Yeah, the motorway has completely obliterated any traces. So all the farms there virtually all burned down, and not all were renewed. So this is where 3rd Battalion had to break through towards the Germans. And Edwin should be now in the woods, and he is now looking back towards me. I am standing just to the right of the trees on the right-hand side. Yep.
Right. Okay.
And where Edwin is, so this is the view that the Germans had, and this is the commanding position that they had. With just a couple of hundred guys, maybe 200 guys, and some heavy weapons, they were able to stop a corps trying to retake them. The 506 plus all attached British units, plus a lot of artillery that were firing at that time, and all the attempts coming from the south. And they stood fast, and they did not give a lot of ground.
I mean, and how much of their position was benefited by the fact they're in the woods? I mean, there was slightly more woods then, but I mean, they've got a good, I'm going to call it a thumb-shaped position across the road there, so they've got a good area to defend. So I mean, they've got a bit of an advantage there.
Yeah, it's like having a moat around the castle.
Yeah,
they could stay relatively safe, at least from view, inside the woods, and then project their power outward using their long-range weapons.
Yeah,
and just any Sherman that would drive out into the open field that I am now would be toast.
Totally. It looks like we have some slit trenches there.
Yep. So in the woods are remains of fighting positions, slit trenches, and also some larger positions which could indicate on mortars being dug in there or other weapons. And you are, we've all seen Band of Brothers, so we know how safe it is to be in the woods during a shelling. But it's all relative, but at least you're hidden from view.
Yeah,
and that really helped the Germans a lot. So now with the 1st and 3rd battalions not able to make any headway, Colonel Singh came up with another plan, and he sent the 2nd battalion on a wide sweeping move around the Koevering battle and attack them, what the hope would be, from the rear. And that will be the next map in the series.
Just getting that. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
There we are. I see. So 2nd Battalion, 506 down here. Yep. Okay.
Yep. And it is here that also Easy Company was involved. They were the lead company in this attack. And they moved as, so you can switch Edwin. I don't know if you see Edwin still, or am I?
I'll take the map off for a second. I'm still on Edwin's camera. I'll take the map for a minute. Yeah. So Edwin is moving
now,
speed.
Yeah, he's running to his car to get to the next location. So
okay, so should I put on you now, or?
Yes, yeah.
I know this is absolutely brilliant stuff, you guys. This is incredible. People are enjoying it. This is live foxhole slit trenches, brilliant stuff. I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
Yeah. So the 2nd Battalion went all the way around Koevering. I'm now looking the wrong way, but not to speed up the camera move too much. So over there is Vechel, and the 2nd Battalion went all the way around the woods and then attack it from the rear, basically being already on the other side of the thumb-shaped perimeter that the Germans had around the road. And they made pretty good progress. They had already cleared part of the woods. You can see in the middle section, that's where they pushed the Germans out. And one of the tanks that were with the 2nd Battalion was commanded by Sergeant Newman, Lance Sergeant Newman, I should say. And it's all a bit confused, of course, but the war diary does the best job of describing it. And he came out of the woods after protecting or firing on the Germans from the paths. And then all of a sudden he was confronted with a Jagdpanther. And I don't know if Doreen is already back at her original location. And,
looks like it. Yep.
Yep. And so roughly where she is now, driving back. Oh no, she's still at the 1st location. That's my bad. Okay. So she's now driving all the way through the German perimeter back to where she began, which was on the other side. And it is from there that a Jagdpanther was spotted by Newman, and Newman immediately fired. And the war diary says, he even hit the tank, but it made absolutely no impact at all. The shell just bounced off on the glacier, on the angle of the armor.
Yeah.
And frantically he tried to back off and back into safety, out of view, but he was quickly hit again and then again by a couple of shells, and another 3 British tankers were killed on the road. And there were Thomas Nieuwint, Frederick Huggins, and Percy Hollis. And Edwin should be in that area now. And he is now slowly driving the same road that Easy Company, being the lead company of the 2nd Battalion, moved towards the motorway, towards the German positions, trying to cut them off on the southern side and link up with the forces coming back, coming from the south.
Wow. This is brilliant stuff, guys.
They went through the woods on the right-hand side when all of a sudden Sergeant Nieuwint's tank was hit.
And have I got a photo of that Sherman or not? I'm.
Yes, you do.
That's
yes.
One of it on its back.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, there we are. Wow.
So Shermans don't end up on their backs by accident. They don't end up on their backs by explosions either. So after the battle was over, they turned the Sherman Turtle, and they removed all the driving wheels, sprockets, everything.
Yeah.
They even took out the gearbox. Everything that could be reused, they did, because whatever they had on their as a spare themselves, it did not have to be shipped from the States.
Yeah.
So you see lots of pictures of Shermans on their sides, upside down even, where with all the bits and pieces missing.
Oh, I've just seen we've got the monument there. Okay.
Yep. And this monument was put here by Doris. And Doris was the wife of Sergeant Nieuwint. And she was so sad that her husband died. She never remarried. And she often visited the place where Edwin is now looking at the spot. And allegedly, her last words when she passed away were Thomas, which is
wow.
Thomas Nieuwint's first name. And there is even a post I saw that her ashes were buried with Nieuwint in the Uden War Cemetery. But I've not been able to confirm that. But this was he was the love of her life, and he never wanted to part from him.
Wow! Thanks for sharing the story.
On the left-hand side is where the Sherman tank was turned turtle. Probably at first it was blocking the path, and then it was pushed away to reopen the road. Well, the objective was almost met at that point. The Germans were now completely surrounded. About 7:30 in the evening, the Americans were able to cross the road and completely cut off the Germans on the southern side as well. And Edwin is now pointing, looking at the area in the car, driving out towards the motorway. And by this time, the German situation was virtually hopeless. Their original objective to capture the bridges at Veghel were basically blocked from the get-go at Eerde. Nieuwint with his men, they managed to penetrate the lines and reach the road and destroy a column. But the objective was to destroy the bridges. And Hitler himself personally was involved in this bit of planning, where he told the German High Command that Veghel was the linchpin of the operation, because if you destroy, if you keep blocking the road and destroy the bridges, then everything north of Veghel you can deal with at leisure. Yeah. And there was quite a bit of British and American and another airborne division north. So it was paramount for the Germans to try and retake the bridges and destroy them. But Nieuwint and his men, no way in hell that they could ever do that. So they got the word on the evening of the 25th that they were allowed to withdraw during the night.
And so that's map 4, yeah?
Yep.
Right, okay, yep, got it.
So when they were virtually surrounded, and this is the bit of the battle which still is confusing. They somehow disappeared, even though they were virtually surrounded. And I put the red arrow of Kampfgruppe Huber leaving there. I have no idea if that is correct.
Right.
There's no way of knowing. The Germans were surrounded by the British and the Americans, but they still somehow managed to escape. And not just with their foot soldiers, but also with their tanks and with the 88mm guns.
Wow.
Probably the Jagdpanthers towed them away and to safety. And the last position where the Germans were, this is Edwin's view. So if you switch to Doreen's view, so she is right at the other side of the road where she started. And in one of the books, this is the escape route of the Germans. In the book Autumn Gale by Didde and Schwartz, they say this is the road that they took to escape. But as we've already seen, Easy Company or 2nd Battalion at that point had crossed the road, and they had linked up with the guys coming up from the south. So it is really amazing that they escaped. And the next morning, the Allies launched a attack coming from multiple directions, trying to reopen the road once and for all, only to find out that the Germans were gone. And they took 20 guys prisoner. That's it, no more. And suddenly, well, the road was free of Germans. I wouldn't say that it was open. It was completely littered with wrecks, and all the wrecks were booby trapped. And the Germans had mined the verges. So it took until 3 in the afternoon before the road was finally reopened and traffic could resume. And this is the 26th of September that the road was reopened. And at that time, the British at Arnhem had already been evacuated.
Yeah.
So during the night, when the Germans evacuated their forces from the Koevering area, that's the same night that the British 1st Airborne Division was evacuated across the Rhine. And of course, this attack was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
On the 24th of September, Horrocks had a conference in Sint-Oederode with Dempsey. And Horrocks was still believing in the operation. And maybe he was the only one at that point who still believed in the operation. And he said he had plans to have multiple battalions cross the Rhine to the west of the British perimeter, and then attack the Germans from the rear. And when he had finished, laying out his plans, a motorcycle driver came in with the notice that the road had been cut behind them.
Yeah.
And it's not long after that Dempsey said, "Look, enough is enough. We're going to evacuate the British from Arnhem. If we can't even keep our line of supply open, there's no way we'll be able to get across the Rhine and reach the Zuiderzee, IJsselmeer, which had been the objective of Market Garden."
Yeah, so damage limitation at this point, isn't it? It's things have gone wrong, but do we throw more people in and lose them? And the point you made about this happening at the Germany evacuation happening at the same time as the final evacuation from Arnhem, I think is very pertinent, because when we follow a battle of Market Garden, we tend to follow the highlights, if you like, but forget that sometimes there are other events that are happening at exactly the same time that we overlook, in that we're all thinking about the collapsing bag in Arnhem and the escape and things, but of course other things happening other places. And I think our brains can't handle the fact there are multiple things going on at the same time, so we pick the big ones. So I'm very grateful that you've drawn a spotlight onto this other very, very significant story.
And everything is connected. Everything interlocks. The reasons that they could not break out from Nijmegen after they captured the Nijmegen road bridge was because a day later, 2 days later, the Germans cut the road north of Veghel, and then when they finally reopened it, they cut it south of Veghel. So it's when you look back at on the 17th when the 30 Corps left their starting positions. It took them 2 days to reach Son, and on the 19th they finally made good progress towards Nijmegen. And then on the 20th, and then the evening of the 19th, the Germans launched a counterattack. On the 20th, the road was closed for most of the day. Then on the 22nd, the Germans attacked, and it was closed till the afternoon of the 23rd. And then on the 24th, it was closed again. So with good reasons, the Americans called this Hell's Highway. And just the fact that the corps on the side were unable to move up with 30 Corps, which was originally the plan, doomed the operation maybe even from the start.
Yeah. So I've just to monitor what's happening on the YouTube channel. So the questions we have are as follows: where are the British, the tankers buried? Which are they in one single cemetery? Are they buried in several ones? I mean, so the tank crewmen, and where are they buried? Which cemetery?
All the men from B Squadron 44 Royal Tank Regiment, they are all buried at Uden War Cemetery.
Right. The other question is from a couple of people. Which are there any particular books that cover this sort of American and the ground area around this area here? Any particular recommendations?
Yes, but it's very difficult to get your hands on this book. It's called Autumn Gale, and that tells the story of the 559 Schwere Heeres Panzerjäger Battalion. And it's a book by Didden and Swartz, and they describe this attack in detail.
Right.
Whereas most books just, they mention it, but not by much. So even if you take the Rendezvous with Destiny, our the most famous book about Market Garden for the 101st Airborne, Koevering battle is about 2.5 pages.
Yeah,
that's it. So
and Ben Main is saying, are you going to the churchyard at Erde?
Not part of this live stream.
Next show. Yeah. So
sure,
no.
Yeah, it might be a good one. So yeah, it's I lost my thread.
It doesn't matter. It's my fault for asking you questions. So, I mean, it's been an amazing presentation. I've really enjoyed it. So, I mean, you've given us the impact on Horrocks and the timing and the fact they decide to push on. So, I need to ask you some questions as in terms of. I know you're both you and Edwin are guides, and how much of this information you're taking us around these sites? Have you worked on a lot of these locations yourselves? Is it as in terms of touring it, is it your own kind of work you put into this?
Yes, absolutely.
I assumed it was.
Yeah, this is one of those areas that I really try to dig more information up from what happened. So all the different war diaries from the British, which give far more information about what happened here than the American after action reports, books and eyewitness reports, all that stuff. That you try and piece this together, because this was the ultimate attack that the Germans made on the corridor, trying to break through to the bridges. After this, they never tried again to retake the bridge. So they didn't even attack the corridor anymore after this attack. So this really was the straw that broke the camel's back, the end of Market Garden. And it just surprises me that so little is known about this battle.
Well, they know more now thanks to you guys. And as one battlefield nut to another, I can only say well done for all this incredible work you've done putting this together, and for the uniqueness of doing these live streams 76 years on to the day, and the day to the first part of it, and then tomorrow for the rest part of it. I mean, it's amazing format, and this is exactly what I wanted to achieve when we started these World War II TV things back in June. So exemplary work, guys. And what can I say? It's been incredible stuff. So has Edwin, have you got any comment you'd like to make, Edwin, just when we're towards the end of it, because you know your stuff as well? Anything?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, yeah, I just touched on mute, and it came up twice, so I wasn't really sure if it was working correctly. Well, of course, there's loads of things we can add, but I'm afraid we would need at least another hour Paul. So let's
Yeah.
refrain from that. I think Joris did an excellent job explaining the battle, and yeah, it's also good to view it in context. What happened here and the significance of what happened here on the larger picture of Market Garden, and especially how the almost continuous cutting of the road by the Germans on the 20th, the 22nd, and a big part of the 23rd, on the 24th, late in the afternoon, 25th. You know, if you just reckon that the British started to really move forward from Zon Bridge on the morning of the 19th, and you just count how many days the road was actually open, the main supply route north to get to Nijmegen and to Arnhem and beyond was open. That was just about, let's say, roughly 25% of the time.
Yeah, which is very, very interesting. And I think what you've also done, you guys, is you've combined the British and American stories very, very well, because I think historians and the fans have tended to look at the stories separately. The British in Arnhem, the American South, and it needs to be looked at as a much more complex picture. And this idea, the tank, the Royal Tank Regiment supporting the Americans and keeping a road open, the glider pilots Joris talked about, I think it's much more informative to bring all the story together. So it's been fantastic stuff, guys.
Yeah, and if you only read or watch Band of Brothers, but if you read Band of Brothers, the way they describe the Sergeant Nieuwint tank incident, they say that Nieuwint was paraphrasing here, was a bit of an idiot, just bursting through the trees and then running into a Jagdpanther and getting himself killed. Whereas they've been working with Nieuwint and his mates for a couple of days at that point.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it just angers me that the way the British are portrayed as bumbling fools, whereas they were professional soldiers who'd been at it for years.
Well, let's also not forget 44 Royal Tank Regiment was a tank battalion which was already, I think, established before the war, and they basically had been fighting since before El Alamein. So they came from the northern desert. They went into the second battle of El Alamein at a certain point and drove with Montgomery's 8th Army across northern Africa, then on to Sicily, onto Italy, back to England to train for Normandy. They landed a couple of days after D-Day, were involved in the heavy fighting around Caen, and I only need to refer to Hill 112 to you, Paul, and what I'm talking about. You know, some of these veterans in the 44 Royal Tank Regiment, I couldn't speak of Nieuwint because I don't know his complete background, but some of these guys, including one of the guys that were killed actually in Nuenen a couple of days before, were actually veterans from a couple of years of campaigns. So
so they know
these guys knew their stuff. They knew that they were doing.
Well, we've got one final question. I think the question is from why was there a lack of air support for both US and British airborne troops along the highway apart from day one? So have you any comments about the air power, or is it just the problem of friendly fire and everybody being very close to each other?
Well, the simple version is they were overlooked in the planning.
Yeah.
And then they were used at Veghel on the north side of Veghel during Black Friday. That's when the British Air Force really played a role. Bad weather, bad communication, and in the case of Koevering, also the battlefield was way too small for rocket firing typhoons to be able to safely attack the Germans. They even halted artillery fire at this battle. Yeah. But we can do a lecture on it, especially Edwin. He knows a lot of stuff about this.
Well, also what I like to add two things. What we mustn't forget is the forward air observers. They tend to be with the forward lines and not with the lines of communication or the main supply route in the rear.
That's a very good point.
It's not where you have your forward air observers at. The second point I like to make is also that there were, agreements. I don't think it was quite a mutual agreement, But let's say the Tactical Air Force, Second Tactical Air Force, was ordered not to fly on certain dates and hours, because then the airbornes would be resupplied. There might be gliders coming in, there might be resupplies coming in. So some of the time, the air space was just shot for them. They couldn't provide close air support then. Count that with the bad weather that kicked in at more than one occasion. And I think that pretty much clear.
You've answered that question perfectly. So I think well, we'll bring this show to an end then. And if you want to switch the cameras around on your handsome faces and say goodbye, that would be fantastic. And while you're doing that, so there's Edwin there and for those watching, we've got our Crappy War Films live stream tomorrow night, part of Naffy Natters, a new thing we're doing, World War II TV. It's 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Then we're beaming from the 8th Air Force Base, the B-17 bombers in Essex on Sunday afternoon. And then lots of things I'm working on right now. So, guys, I knew you'd be. Doreen. Well, look, we've got a bonus shot there. Look at that, fantastic. So, Doreen has got us the crews there.
Doreen went to Eerde, to the cemetery there. These are the crews of the tanks of the Royal Tank Regiment that were destroyed earlier in the day in Eerde itself.
Wow.
So these were not involved in the Koevering operation, but these tried to help the 501st to clear the sand dunes. And these are the graves of the men who didn't make it. And one of them, Gilbert Ashton, 20 years old when he was killed. He was actually in with the 44 Royal Tank Regiment all through El Alamein and beyond.
Well, that's
only to be killed. Yeah.
A perfect way to end the show then, guys. So thank you, Doreen, as well, for your excellent camera work. You're now part of the Dutch Dream Team as well. So fantastic. Well, the feedback from people on YouTube is that they loved it, and of course they did, because you're brilliant, you guys. So you know what you're doing. The problem is you just made me want to use you team again now. So I mean, there's plenty of winter ahead of us. There's more things we can come back and talk. If you want to come on and talk about stuff, I would have you back at the drop of a hat. You're brilliant, you guys. So
well, we will be discussing that over Messenger.
Yes. Let's do that. Well, thank you very much, guys. It's been fantastic. I'm going to end the stream now, guys. So again, check us out on Patreon, World War II TV. Check out the Joris's and Edwin's touring pages and what they're doing as well, because they also contribute things to other tours and guides and historians, and then you can hire Edwin and Joris. And so there we are. That's it. Fantastic stuff. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So see you for the war film discussion tomorrow night, viewers. And I'm saying thank you very much to these incredible team out in Holland today. And the rain stayed away, so fantastic. So
it's fantastic. Yeah.
And in fact, got a nice bit of sunset going on there. So beginning to
it's not too bad.
Beautiful stuff. So thanks, guys. I'm going to end stream now. We'll see you all again on World War II TV very soon. Thank you for watching.
Okay, bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Right. Well, we're done. It's